Another week, another terrorist attack. Scotty Nell Hughes with RedAlerts.com, and I'm sitting here looking at CNN at the breaking news story that in Turkey, 2 suicide bombers have hit the Istanbul airport, a very busy airport. Probably, I think they said the second or third largest in the world. And right there at the airport. And they're wondering, who is it? Who would be the person that would absolutely go in there? And we're getting all this is just breaking news right now. Who would be the folks that would go in there and try to hurt others in an airport? Well, we'll let the experts leave that tip, but you and I out here probably have a few guesses, especially considering it is Istanbul. Scotty Nell Hughes, and thank you for joining me on my daily chat. I hate to bring it, but to you under the circumstance that once again, right next to Syria in Turkey, and then you've got Istanbul right there, you have another terrorist attack. For some reason, it's going to be interesting to see. Anybody want to guess out there in social media land who the perpetrator is or who's the one that's going to claim this? And possibly what religion they might be by. I mean, there I go again, profiling. But unfortunately, we've been through this around the world way too much. But here at home, it's a different status. Now, go on. I would love to see your comments below right now, please, as we have this conversation today. But I want to talk about this recent rumor that started yesterday and the fact that Mr. Trump is going to take out the temporary ban of Muslims here in the United States until we figure out this problem we are having. Now, you saw the leftist media. I mean, they just blew up about this. And of course, that Democrat lamestream media, they went two ways. On one way, they said, look, it just shows he's a flip-flopper. He gets up there with Paul Ryan, he gets up there with the Republicans, and he changes his message like a typical politician. See, he's just like the rest of them. You can't count on what he says. He's running in a general election now, and that thing that he said during the primary, that was just to win the primary. So they discount him on that point. Then you have the other side that's sitting here and going, see, look, he's as much like a Democrat like everybody else. See, so we might as well actually get a true Democrat and vote for Hillary Clinton. I mean, the man can't win. So let's do some clarification. First, I want to look at this. And my buddy Andrew Langer with the Langercast and I have been kind of working on this today. We came with this idea that it's disingenuous of all those Democrats to criticize Mr. Trump for trying to make policy in a crisis, since their entire gun agenda is crisis driven. Likewise, there is no small amount of irony in their eagerness to essentially shortchange in the process for ensuring that this nation remains protected, that we actually, vet the refugees that are coming into our borders, while at the same time, they're driving to shortchange the rights and the due process of those American citizens. I mean, I really get a laugh at these folks that sit there and say that we are vetting these refugees that are coming into this country. You know what? I'm sorry. The majority of them don't even have running water. They don't even necessarily have vehicles. They don't have track records. They don't have computers. How can you vet somebody and know their history if they didn't have the technology to have a history? I mean, these conversations are happening in the caves and the caverns of the deserts of Syria, of Afghanistan, of Iraq. They're not happening necessarily all the time on social media. And these refugees that are running away from these countries, they wouldn't be running away if they were leaving some of the luxuries that we have today. They're leaving because there's nothing left there for them, so they can just leave it there. They're leaving because they're persecuted or they're afraid they might die there, but they're not taking much with them because they never had much to begin with. Now, I know they say it's impossible for us in America, that we can't sit here and say, you can't give a religious test. And I try to stay with that. But religion has long played a role in asylum policies here in the United States. Those that wanted to take refuge here in the U.S. In fact, the U.S. government does ask, because just saying that you want to be a refuge, you want to seek refuge here for religious wise is not enough. The U.S. government already asked you why. Are you being persecuted because of your religion, because of your belief, and specifically? So that question's already being asked of refugees. So to sit there and say that we cannot ask people coming in what their religion is wrong. The U.S. government already does that. And if they're coming over here already saying that they want seeking refugee here, being a refugee in the United States because of their religion, they're already asking the question. So let's listen to their answers. Let's actually see what their answers are, if they're true, if they're tried. Finally, unlike the Democrats who continue to push this gun control policy, Mr. Trump's policy is refugee migration is the very definition of policy being developed outside of crisis. You know, Mr. Trump mentioned this first thing out of San Bernardino when that happened. And then it's developed over and over the course of the 6 months. And so what you're seeing now is Mr. Trump coming back and just saying, here are the more specifics about it, as we're starting to realize exactly what we're dealing with. But make no mistake, while the leftists, while those are trying to pressure him, even those within the establishment, they're saying he needs to change his tone, I have to wonder, you know, you look back at the polls and 50% of Americans believe that we needed some sort of temporary ban to get this problem fixed, that we could vet those that were coming in. You know, until Mr. Trump takes office in January 2017, he does not have certain security clearances that many of those in elected office does. He doesn't know the situation we're handling with. And as he's getting closer and closer, now that he's the presumptive nominee, I can guess that he's getting more and more information on it. But at the same time, he's not getting the full picture, and he probably will not until he's sworn in. So that process of figuring out, as he has stated, of course, has to continue. And so for him to sit here and continue to clarify, it's not him changing his policies, as many of the left and many of those would like you to say. No, I really think it's funny. Now, here's what I hope. And this is coming from a Trump surrogate, somebody who supported Mr. Trump. I hope that he does not fall prey to those within the establishment says we need to take that out. I'm sorry. I think Mr. Trump got a lot of his thunder, his storm, because people here were scared. And his idea of actually taking action and temporarily shutting down the system so we could know who exactly was coming in, I think that appealed to a lot, not only within the Republican Party, not only in the conservative base, but even on the other side of the aisle. We've seen it time and time again. And when you have Hillary Clinton saying that she wants to bring in 60,000 more refugees, and this government is saying, look, we're vetting them, which is a complete joke. We don't know where they're going. You have governors saying they don't want these refugees and they're being forced on their lands. They're being forced in their communities. We don't know that there's 20,000 refugees somewhere here in the state of Tennessee, and I don't know where they are. The majority of people do not know where these people are being relocated. And I fair to mention, the federal government doesn't even know where these refugees are going. We can't keep track on them. So all I have to say right now, to those right now questioning Mr. Trump's idea on this idea of do you think that, you know, we need to take this idea of, you know what, I think anybody who comes from any country that has some sort of, you know, strong ties to terrorism, that has a history of terrorism, yes, I think we definitely need to vet those, considering those countries probably don't vet their systems themselves. But we also have to be careful, because a lot of these terrorists come from countries like France and Belgium because they've been refugees there. Let's not forget the Paris killers, the Paris bombing that happened. Those folks came in under refugee status. They lied. They were ISIS that infiltrated under refugee status. You can't sit there and believe these people. And to sit there in the federal government say, you know what, if I'm going to ask you who you are, or you're going to be offended, or I'm just going to take for sure what you say and think that that's the right thing. What kind of fairy tale land are we living in here? At that point, we're just opening ourselves up, and why even bother? So we're living in a very, very precarious time right now, folks. We know this. And until we can get an idea about what our national security is, what the status of our borders are, I think we better err on the side of caution. Other countries, they do it. They pick and choose who can come into their country. Why are we as Americans demonized if we do the same? All in the name of protecting our family. It's not to be mean. It's not to hurt others. I agree. Keith points out it's a Trojan horse. That's exactly what I'm afraid. I'm afraid that this is a Trojan horse. That they're coming into this country. And it's kind of, you look at London right now, who just elected their first Muslim mayor, who might be a really, really nice guy. And granted, there are only 1% of Muslims in this world that are radicalized jihadists. But you're dealing with 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. So you have just shy of 1 million Muslims, radicalized jihadists that want to take us out in America. I'm sorry. Please err on the side of caution. I really would ask you that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think Mr. Trump needs to be very careful and not listening to all those people that are talking. And I know, and go along with that original policy, because I think Americans, regardless of their political party, I think for once they were happy to see something change, something different. Because we don't want to sit here and continue to see things like San Bernardino and like Orlando happen. And for all of those out there, and this is one of my favorite things, that say, well, these laws would not have affected these actual killers themselves. They were children of refugees. Well, let's think about that. You know, you're looking at their parents that ran from countries because of religious beliefs, because of economic beliefs. For some reason, they were persecuted and they ran away. Obviously, those parents need to tell their children who are raised here in America those stories more and more. I'm sorry, these kids think that they're being persecuted for being Muslims in this country. Why don't you go ask your parents who ran from their Muslim countries here to America, because they truly were afraid of their lives in a large way, enough that they would sit there and uproot themselves and move into this country. Why don't these parents share these stories more and more with their kids? Because then their children might be a little bit less likely to turn to radical jihadists and homegrown terrorists here on our own lands. They might actually appreciate what freedom and religious freedom actually look like without sitting here and wanting to destroy this country. Their parents ran away from the lands they try to protect. Same thing, it goes with illegal immigration on our southern border. Their parents ran away. Those that come over here and consider themselves to be anchor babies, they ran away from that country because they wanted economic belief. They wanted to feel safe. And they're coming over here. Share those stories with your children, please, because your children are the ones that are sitting here and causing this homegrown terrorism here on our own country and taking for advantage the freedom that we welcomed you in with. And so if parents don't start actually teaching their kids that, America is really a great country, we're going to see more and more of this split up. So Scotty Hughes right here, rightalerts.com. Go check us out. Check some of the stories that I've been talking about. Once again, Turkey, they're now saying 10 dead, 20 plus injured in an airport attack. Once again, another terrorist attack. And yet, we should let these folks just come across or come fly into our country. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. We will chat tomorrow and pray for those in Turkey right now. Thank you.